Well, I've been a little hesitant to jump into the world of vintage lenses because of the type of work that I do, shooting hockey, football, soccer, all the sports. Zooms just tend to work better for that type of work. But as of recently, I've had the chance to dabble a little bit in the world of vintage lenses, and I like it. I like it a lot. Now, in my last video, I talked about wanting to add more interviews to the doc series Pulled Together for the Toronto Argonauts, and in doing that, wanting to add a bit more style and character to those interviews that I could follow throughout the season. And that's where I had the opportunity to get into this vintagey lens world. One of the common themes in any team sport, whether it's soccer, football, or hockey, is the need for grit and character in its players. And I wanted a way to visually represent that grit and character, and there's no better way to do that than in your lens choice. So I started looking at those different possibilities, and well, what are vintage lenses known for? Sometimes a little grit and character. Considering these lenses are vintage, you're not going to find them at any run-of-the-mill electronics store like your Best Buy or, I don't know, insert camera store below. And if you do go out to a specific vintage camera shop, you're probably going to pay a considerable markup for them. Now, luckily, we live in a time of eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and Kijiji, and well, I kept my eyes open and found myself an insane deal on a few lenses. This is my Canon 50mm FD f1.8 lens, and these lenses were made back in the 1970s as far as my research has told me. I don't know exactly which run this one's from, but it's in great shape, and it cost me $150. Now, these lenses are great because the technology wasn't as good back in the day as it is now to get a perfectly sharp image, but it's kind of what we're looking for when our sensors are already so clinical looking. And on the FX6, this lens has been pairing great so far. I've been able to use it on a few projects now, and the first one being the Toronto Maple Leafs playoff run, which as usual is pretty short, but it was super fun getting those shots of fans and their excitement and disappointment, just getting up close and personal with them as they're cheering on their favorite team. It just had a character that you don't normally see on those clinical E-mount lenses that I shoot on for a lot of projects, where the fall off is just smoother. You've got a little bit of chromatic aberration, which looks great when it's wide open. It's something that we're not normally looking for, but these lenses just do a really good job at making it feel organic, and it just livens up the image so much more. So I had a ton of fun on that project. Now I was also able to shoot a second documentary project with this lens with Andre Morgan, who's a local run photographer. He's a Saucony ambassador as well. So we've been working together to show the community that he's building within Hamilton and in the running space. So I was riding a one wheel with this lens on my FX6 with him mic'd up.
I'm bugging them to just like, hey, let me see some photos. Let me see. They babysit the camera because they get into a space where like, oh, but if I point my camera at someone, I'm worried if they're gonna ask me for the photo after. And I was like, man, you gotta get out of that.
And shooting around an f4 to 5.6 because that's the point where I find that the lens really starts to sharpen up. Not only does it sharpen up, but it also shows a little more depth in your image. So I wanted to show where we were running to.
Dope. Speed. See that speed?
You want to see the other people within the scene and not just isolate him on his own, because this project is about building community. So we want to see the environment that he was in. So shooting from f4 to 5.6 still gave us that blurry background that we all know and love, but gave enough depth so that we could get a little more context as to what was going on in the scene. But Overall, so far, this lens is a great entryway into the vintage lens world because it's really affordable. I managed to pick this one up for around $125 with the adapter, and I've been having a ton of fun with it so far. The Helios 44-2 is the second lens that I got in my Facebook Marketplace find, and it's incredibly popular in the filmmaking community thanks to its swirly, dreamlike bokeh, and maybe because of a local Toronto documentary filmmaker.
This is the Helios 44-2. It's actually a 58mm lens, but the FX3 shot maybe 85% of it on the Helios using their lens here. You guessed it. It's my Helios lens. It says 35 in the background. It's not. It's a 58mm lens. Weird.
And a movie called Dune Part 2.
He said that.
I got that. Thanks.
I was especially hesitant to get this lens because it seems like every filmmaker and their grandma has it at this point, but then I realized that most of my clients who are watching any of my work, they don't know that. They just see the effect of the lens, and they may not even know what the difference is that they're seeing, but they just feel that there's something different and a quality that hopefully they really like within the shot that I'm showing them. And although this lens has been made really popular by Mark Bone and Greg Fraser, the cinematographer for Dune Part 2, I don't see myself pulling this out of my bag all of the time. And I actually don't see myself pulling this out of the bag unless there's a really specific use case for it. It's a little too wild for my taste in most of my shots, but it is really fun when the need arises to have that swirly background, dreamlike bokeh that this lens gives you. But for me, the zoom lenses will still be the bread and butter tool for most of my work, working in sports and documentary, where things are happening quickly. You don't know where that next shot's gonna happen, and you need to be able to punch in quickly. I don't have time to do a quick lens swap or anything like that, but when I'm doing a more sit-down interview, like I am right now, just talking to camera, I had time to set up a key light. I've got backlights, I've got other practicals in the shot, and I've got a 600C blasting sunlight in on an otherwise cloudy day. So for those types of shoots, I can't wait to work with primes a lot more, because it really does make you zoom with your feet and think about your next shot a lot more than if you're on a zoom lens like a 35 to 150, where you can just get all the shots that you need from a limited space, which is why that tool is also great. But in terms of vintage primes, I think I'm just getting started, and there's actually another set that I am very curious to spend more time with. I had a little time to spend with them, but that's gonna be a video for another day. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what lenses you really like in the vintage realm. What use cases do you have for them? Do you spend most of your time on those lenses, or do you find yourself gravitating more towards modern clinical lenses like myself? It's just something that I'm starting to break into, having a ton of fun with it. And yeah, I'd just love to hear more of your thoughts on them. So let me know down in the comments below. And if you like the content, like and subscribe. I spent some time setting up in my dusty, very dirty garage. We'll see you next time.